Hello and welcome back to Everard Junction. It's been 16 months since the last video. Today I have some free time, so I thought it would be a good idea to blow the dust off of the layout, get some trains running and provide an update with regards to where I'm at with my current projects and plans. So let's begin with where I left off in the previous video. I'd bought myself a house that needed a great deal of renovation work, and then about 2 months later I was made redundant by my previous employer without pay. This was due to them going bankrupt, which, while not entirely surprising, did catch me a little off guard, as I was rather hoping the business would last about another 6 to 8 months before having to look for a new job. All progress on Everard Junction stopped. I was busy making a start on the house renovation and getting started in a new job. One of the reasons for the new house was to be closer to more opportunities for work in the world of restoring and resto-modding classic cars, my profession for the last 10 years. The new job is going well, and overall the business is considerably more stable and successful than my previous employer, so fingers crossed. So the house, goodness me, where do we begin? It's an old house from 1950. It was very well priced, structurally sound, reasonably large, had an all-important garage, and was located in a tiny village in the middle of the countryside. It needed, and still needs, a considerable amount of work, but it ticked all of my boxes, and I just couldn't say no. When I moved in, it could best be described as neglected and in dire need of modernisation, just like the railways in 1946. I had no intention of filming any of the renovation work. In the interest of time and trying to get stuff done, I made the decision not to film any of it. Not to mention, it's not exactly the focus for this channel. However, for those of you who are curious, I have made some decent progress, I'd like to think, and whilst there's a fair bit left to do, it's certainly come a long way. Firstly, I rewired the house. The electrical installation was okay, as it had been rewired in approximately 1989. However, there was a serious lack of sockets in every single room, especially the bedrooms. Most of the bedrooms had just one socket, which is to be expected for houses of this age. In addition to the rewire, I also installed numerous extra sockets and relocated all of the sockets to be more useful in the modern world that we live in today. Another treat was that the house still retained its original lead water supply pipe from 1950. Now, ignoring the fact that it's made from lead, this pipe was now 75 years old and had built up so much contamination internally that the water pressure was quite poor. This pipe has now been replaced with the typical blue plastic pipe that's been standard in construction for many years. I've also moved all of the exposed plumbing in the kitchen to the pantry, where it remains accessible for maintenance but not visible. This is where a lot of time gets chewed up, drilling holes for plumbing, installing a new stopcock for example, and the general making good of the plaster around the new installation, as well as tidying up all of the old mess where the old pipework went. It all takes a very long time. Several new windows and doors have been installed. Whilst this is still a work in progress, I have managed to get some of them changed. Most of the old windows dated from the 1990s and they were not installed very well. In fact, one of the upstairs windows actually fell out of the house shortly before I was due to complete the purchase, so I made sure this was replaced by the previous owner before going any further. Another big job was demolishing the chimney that ran through from the dining room downstairs to the master bedroom upstairs, and then finally emerging in the centre of the attic. Now obviously this is robbing an awful lot of space from the two rooms that it runs through, and if I want to build a model railway in the loft, it's smack bang in the way. So I've now demolished this, and it was much more difficult than I expected. Turns out the entire house is built using engineering brick, and they fought me very, very hard. The concrete subfloor downstairs was very uneven, and it was finished with some lovely brown asbestos floor tiles, with the kitchen finished in 15mm thick quarry tiles. I removed all of this for obvious reasons, repaired, treated and self-levelled the concrete subfloor before finishing it off with a wet underfloor heating system and covering that with an engineered wood floor. The walls and ceilings of every room varied somewhere between bad and unpleasant. I'm particularly proud of this shot where I can get my hand under a spirit level that is supposedly on a flat wall. Slowly, I'm replastering the entire house, ceilings included. It's not easy, I don't enjoy doing it, but by focusing on one wall at a time, I'm able to do it myself, and it's very satisfying seeing the rooms come back to life. Those are just some of the major things, but obviously there's loads of other jobs, such as replacing all of the skirting board, replacing all of the architrave and door frames, changing the interior doors, but you get the idea. If I was to give a rough guess for where we are in the renovation, I would say I'm about 40% of the way through all of the major renovation work. You might wonder why I've decided to do all this. You might think I'm mad, and you could be right. Frankly, I've dedicated myself to restoring and building things. I really enjoy it. I'm not much of a fan of new builds, especially the ones in my price range. Since leaving school, I always wanted to find an older property and do some work and do it up. It's been a long journey, although it has only been 16 months. I'm very happy with the progress, especially as this winter I'll have heating in the house for the first time. There's a long way to go. I've no intention of rushing it, but keep going. And eventually I'll get there. So while I have been very busy working on the house and settling into the new job, I've always maintained that model railways is a disease. It never really goes away, regardless of what you do in life. It's always following you around. So of course, I've kept an eye on the hobby, and I've been looking out for new releases that are of interest to me. My budget is limited, so I make very careful and considered purchases when it comes to rolling stock for the layout and future layout, but obviously it's hard to justify as I'm not currently modelling at the moment. So I'll give you a quick look at a pair of new models that I've acquired for the layout. There are others, but they are currently in storage. So as you can see here, we have two new models from Accurascale in the form of the Class 31 and the Class 50. If you would like me to take a more detailed look at new models such as this, let me know in the comments below. I'm a little bit wary of this sort of content and I don't want to make videos for the sake of it, but if you would be interested in hearing my thoughts, let me know. So I'll just go through these very briefly. Class 31. Very excited about this particular release. I pre-ordered them a number of years ago when they were initially announced. I only have one Class 31 in the fleet, and that's been the case since I got into the diesel and electric side of the hobby. The Hornby Class 50 and the Hornby Class 31, and I could add to that the HST, the 08 and various other diesel and electric locomotives that they offer, are not exactly released frequently, and if you miss out on a particular livery, then you usually have to wait 5, 6, 7 years before they decide to bring it back into the shops, albeit under a different running number. Staying on that theme, I think certainly the few Hornby models I have in my fleet, I think their days are numbered. I'm looking forward to the Cavalex Class 56s. I think that's batch 2, if I'm not mistaken. But hopefully, if I've got a few pennies in the pot, I can add at least one of those to the collection. Obviously, the Class 50 is a key model for any Western region modeler, and myself is no exception. I currently have two Class 50s from Accurascale, and here you can see 50021 Rodney. Obviously, both of these models and the other models that I have acquired over the last 2 years or so require the usual weathering treatment, and I'm looking forward to doing that, but at the moment it's not a priority. I need to crack on with the house. To summarise, I'm very impressed with the level of detail. I'm very impressed with the overall livery application and paint finish. The price is fair. It's about what you would expect these days for a super detail model, on the very slightly cheaper side, which is always a benefit. They certainly seem to run very well, being smooth and quiet. These two models are not currently chipped, but I have a friend with a DC layout, so any new purchases I tend to run over to his place, and we have a jolly good running session. The ones that I've tested on my friend's layout, they seem to work very well. He's also got a number of Accurascale models in his collection, including models like the 66, and generally we've been pretty impressed with the performance. My only criticism would be a general lack of durability. If you're familiar with Bachmann, Hellian, Hornby and Dapol models, they can generally survive the odd knock, the odd nasty derailment and a little bit of mistreatment. This is not the case with the Accurascale models. They are generally a bit more fragile, and I've had a few small parts come loose from these just during general running. I would say some of that is to be expected due to the super detailed nature of these models and the eye-watering number of tiny separately applied parts, but I thought it would be remiss of me not to mention it. So that's 2 new models that have been added to the fleet. There are a few others and you'll see those eventually, I'm sure. Don't really want to get into the whole review territory, so I'll just leave it at that and we'll move on. Let's blow the cobwebs off of the layout, get everything powered up and run some trains. So I'll leave you with that. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back once I've made some more progress or I have some news for you. Take care.